Next up, it's Best Storytelling. Previous winners in this category: 2017, Wolfenstein II, The New Colossus; 2018, Red Dead Redemption 2; 2019, Control; 2020, Paradise Killer; 2021, Psychonauts 2; 2022, Immortality. Our nominees this year: Alan Wake 2, Baldur's Gate 3, Millwall 1, Dredge, Lil Gator Game, Mortal Kombat 1, The Murder of Sonic the Hedgehog, Marvel's Spider-Man 2, Star Wars Jedi Survivor, and Thirsty Suitors. It's a big category this year.
Good
folks.
list.
Yeah, good list. Strong list. And the only person who hasn't gone first yet, it's you, Jack.
Oh, wow, look at this. The honours. Mark, why is Lil Gator Game on this list?
Look, straight to the jugular.
It's a wonderful, adorable little game about a little gator whose big sister comes home for the holidays. She's at college, and all he wants to do is go and play like little adventures with her like they used to when she was younger, but she's got assignments to do, so she can't. So he decides to have all of these kind of little adventures to try and make her jealous and feel like she's missing out and that she needs to play with him. And it's a very, very like precious game, and all these kind of like small isolate, like there's like a girl in like a cave who's pretending to be a vampire, and she really wants ice cream, but she'll only have, I think it's like cherry flavored ice cream or something, so you have to go and get it. And there's all these kind of just like little like kind of small kind of mini stories like that are presented as like these kind of big world events, but they're obviously just, you know, children playing make-believe. And it's very, very adorable. It's not winning this category, but I think that for that world, and we'll probably talk more about it in Game of the Year, I think that story is presented perfectly within the kind of confines of what that game is, and actually executes it very, very well.
A lot of nice moments in it, you know. I think I had a lot of moments nominated that kind of dropped off as other games came out and filled up that category for me. But like, there's like the trial and all these other cute little like one-off set pieces. Yeah, I think it's a pretty easy cut first, but it's cool.
Barry, you're next.
I think for the reasons we talked about with moment, I'd say Mortal Kombat 1 can probably go.
It's a bit uneven.
It's a good first half of a story, and then a pretty deflating second half. And also, you know, like it's just another one of those modes. They do them very well. The NetherRealm kind of super linear story modes. This one didn't really change up much. I realized this game was them going back to the drawing board. I kind of feel like they need to go back again. And
they went back to the drawing board and then decided halfway through they like the old drawing board.
Same place they were at.
What I wanted to ask, right, because I haven't played it, but from what I understand, it was meant to be a reboot. Like, so you get to the end of Mortal Kombat 11, and they, you know, reset time or whatever the fuck nonsense happens, and then Liu Kang becomes a god effectively. But it kind of continues from there, so it's kind of a reboot, but it's also still kind of a continuation of MK11.
When you get into it, you realize it is way more of a literal sequel. They do change a bunch, but it is a direct continuation. They do all these interesting things, like Sub-Zero and Scorpion are brothers. Actually, that's I think that's why it is still nominated. They do all this super cool stuff. Sub-Zero and Scorpion are brothers, and so their eventual split apart, because kind of one of the themes of the game is that Liu Kang crafted this timeline, but he's like, this time it's going to be great. Everyone's going to get along. There'll be no fighting. There'll be no Mortal Kombat, blah, blah, blah. But everything starts to fissure, and eventually the people who were enemies become enemies anyway. Yeah,
you start off with like Scorpion and Sub-Zero are both in the Lin Kuei, and they're kind of like, there's a little bit of jealousy from Scorpion because Sub-Zero leads the Lin Kuei, but it's like, it's just bubbling at first. During that first half we love with like palace intrigue and everything is a slow burn.
And like Sub-Zero is like a real iron fist kind of ruler, and you can tell that's going to cause problems. And for the entire second half of the game, that becomes like the third or fourth most important story thread. And I'm like, but I would actually way more like if you just focused on that and went with that kind of focused personal story, but it's like background noise to the save the multiverse shit that they end up doing in the final act.
I feel like one of the kind of themes or morals they're going with, I'm going to sneeze, excuse me. Or maybe I'm not. Is I can't remember what show it was over the last couple of years did this thing about like, no matter how much you try and change events, whatever kind of events that, I don't know if it was like the first season of Loki did it, I can't remember, but like
Constance.
Whatever thing is going to happen is always going to happen regardless of how much you try and change it and whatnot. So like from that aspect I can kind of see like, like Sub-Zero and Scorpion, they're always going to fight, that's going to happen. But I was kind of just disappointed that it presented itself as a reboot, but as you say, that it's just like, it's still a continuation.
It's doing the same.
It's a requel.
Yeah, and
he really is. Yeah,
and there's just something about calling it Mortal Kombat 1 that, like, and I have issues with kind of modern game naming convention anyway, but that in particular really fucks me off.
It's annoying. It's annoying, especially because they call MK9 is just called Mortal Kombat, so it's Mortal Kombat X, and then Mortal Kombat 11 with 2 numerals, and then Mortal Kombat 1. I think this is the worst
because it's just a case of, because it happens like when Final Fantasy 1 to 3 comes out in Japan, and then I think it was like 4 comes out in America, or 3 comes out in America, but it's the first one, or whatever the fuck. And it's just a mess. And it's just like, you obviously can't plan far enough ahead to know exactly, like, all right, how this is going to go. But at the same time, if you've called it Mortal Kombat, like the reboot, you either stick the conventions, it's either 9 or it's just Mortal Kombat.
Yeah. They should just stick to a regular naming convention like Xbox does.
Yeah. Or go just like Mortal Kombat Revelations, Mortal Kombat Ascension, Mortal Kombat...
Cool word.
Yeah.
Chronicles. Yeah.
There we go. I'm sure they've already done that.
The Chronicles of Mortal Kombat.
Surely with a K. Chronicles.
With a K,
yeah.
It's one of the little things, I suppose it is it is a little bit of in-universe storytelling, is like how, and I said this on the podcast, how literally every word that begins with a C begins with a K in the menus. Yeah. Just to do the bit. And that's a great little thing.
Characters.
It's me next. Look, again, on the basis that it should be here because it's a great bit, but it is an extended bit. Murder of Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yep.
It's not best story of the year. It's got to come.
If I was a couple of whiskeys deep, I'd push you back on that. But
look, it's cute. It's
I want a sequel.
They do a murder party like on a train.
It's on a train as well.
Yeah, it's on a train. Okay, it's full Poirot. Like I love it. It's great.
I love a train or a plane or a boat movie in a way that I can't explain.
Like, I think the joy of the storytelling for me in Murder of Sonic the Hedgehog isn't that I think the story is particularly gripping, but I think it's just like, oh my God, this is still going. Like, because you download it and it was literally an April Fool's joke that this game came out. The whole time you're playing it, you're just like, okay, well now they're just going to stop. Yeah, because like we this is the joke. Yeah, but it just keeps going. Like it's Do
you know another thing the Sonic games have desperately needed is like someone to come along.
Detective work.
Well, there's
gumshoes.
But you know how you have basically from like the Mario. Anytime you have the Mario games with the characters talk, so like from the Paper Mario series onwards, or like the DS games, where they basically just go free reign in terms of, right, let's just kind of like really think about these characters and the world they're in and just kind of run with it and have a laugh with it.
Yeah.
There it is. Bless you.
Finally.
But the Sonic games have never done that. They've always been very kind of po-faced. Outside of like, I can't remember what one of the newer Sonic animated series where they had a bit of fun with it. And I remember there was the bit where Knuckles like has a quick kind of like kind of pro-feminist bit for a second there or something that I saw in a clip one time, and they just have fun with it in a way that they've never really done before. And I think that's kind of the selling point of this game is it kind of just like, let's just not be so fucking like serious about this for a second. Like, it's fucking hedgehogs wearing trainers.
I'd love to see like on International Women's Day, Knuckles just wish all the women are very happy.
A strong and notable ally.
IWD to all the women out there.
Okay, Mark.
Okay. I mean, look, you've put it on here, but I feel like both of you haven't put enough time into it, and I just want to have a laugh and just get Baldur's Gate off earlier than I
don't think any of us wanted to incur the wrath of McGee, but you've done that now, he can have it. Fine.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, it's also, it is just,
it's dense,
thick with things to do and talk to and characters to interact with. And I personally, because I didn't pick any of the animal talking traits, I that's one thing I've missed out on. You could spend your days just talking to people in that game, and it's super interesting. But yeah, neither of us, having played it, are deep enough to put up a fight for it. So
we'd be swinging blindly to try.
No, yeah, there's no.
Like, put me in the shoes of playing this game. Do you think I would last more than 10 minutes?
You wouldn't like it at all. No.
So I feel justified.
I don't think you get as far as the bit where you can finally actually move around in the game.
Oh God. Great.
I think I might like this.
And that's only like 10 or 15 minutes in, maybe.
Yeah, I the gameplay was the thing that put me off rather than the story, I think.
Because I enjoyed playing real life D&D because we were all just making X-Men references about the way we were killing enemies and whatnot. And like, I probably can't do that in Baldur's Gate. So
I mean, you could, but you'd be saying it to yourself.
Yeah,
like,
just saying it to yourself.
At least I'm saying it to
You
other
just do
people.
anything you want in life.
Yeah.
That's true.
you do what you want.
Within
mate, yeah.
reason, you know. So.
Can't do that in Baldur's Gate 3. You can't do anything in Baldur's Gate.
True.
Wow.
Terrible game.
Right.
Ooh.
On that note, Jack.
Yeah, I mean, sort of getting into difficult territory already here. I feel like the least resistance will come if I cut Dredge, though, so that's where I'm going to go.
Yeah, probably. Like Dredge is really cool. I think I would maybe put up a bit of a fight for it on a quieter year, but not against some of this competition.
Yep.
It's also like, you know, it's got some really cool world building, and it's got a bunch of weird fuckers in it. It's just you're constantly just meeting weird fuckers. It's really cool, but I wouldn't put up a fight for it. You know,
It's one of those games. I don't think so much it's about you want to play the game because you want to see where the story goes and you want to progress the story. But as you mentioned there with like these characters, you do just want to explore the world and kind of interact with everything that there is to kind of see, because there's so much kind of just unique. There's kind of a gothic tinge to like the presentation and the overall kind of tone. And then there's obviously the whole sort of like sanity effect of if you're out too long at night. But I think it's a really, really well constructed world to like experience and kind of go around. And I think that it doesn't really hang its hat on like the story being told, but it doesn't need to, because it has all of these kind of elements to it. But I think if you play through Dredge, you don't come away from it thinking, oh yeah, that was like, well, you know, one of the kind of more interesting stories of the year. You just come away thinking, like, that was just a really cool game. That was a really cool experience. Fuck that ghost shark and that kind of stuff, you know?
Yeah.
Barry.
okay, we're down to heavy hitters here, and there's no pick that isn't going to be a fight. It's like, which fight do I want to have?
Where's the least fight coming from?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So based on just I haven't played it, Mark Thirsty Suitors. I mean,
it's my story of the year, so like I have to push back.
Okay, so I know the sales pitch on this game because I think you did a good job with your promo for Dad.
There's even more to it than that. Like I was trying to get as much of the dad part into it as possible.
I think the main problem with it is that like it's a fight you're fighting alone. Like, because when it comes to if it doesn't go now, I'm going for it next.
That's because also, so it's like
everything else I've played. And
this
loved.
is a murderer's row, and it's like, okay, what would you float to swap for it? That you wouldn't get a fight on.
Well,
yeah. Because I think
his options, by the way, are Alan Wake, Spider-Man, or Star Wars. Those are your three boyos you can call.
I mean, the problem is I haven't played two of them.
Yeah,
that is a problem, Mark. That is a problem, sir.
And the three of us have played the other three, and like to varying extents. I've played a few hours of Star Wars. Yeah, I haven't played the whole thing, so it's the one of the three besides Thirsty Suitors I'd fight for the least. But I think it would be unfair of me to cut Star Wars first because I enjoyed it, and I still kind of like, again, like I said on the last Link to the Cast we did, I played a couple of hours of Thirsty Suitors and I'm like, yeah, but it didn't like grab me. I
think the thing with Thirsty Suitors, and maybe there are elements of Spider-Man that would be tangentially similar as well, is, and that's not to say that this is what qualifies it as a better story, but I just think that there's so many like real world elements and presentation to it. There's so many like, you can see how there are people that have experienced these stories, and you can see that a lot of the stories presented in this game and the dynamics between characters come from a very kind of real world place. And without having, spoken to the people that wrote this game, the dynamics that you get between Jala and like her mum, who clearly like, the reason that she is so frosty and iron-willed is because of the relationship she has with her mum. And that kind of comes full circle to the back of the game, where the final boss of the game is you have to fight your grandmother.
Right.
And you basically, and every fight in the game isn't so much like this kind of turn-based fight. It's about this kind of emotional, like, resolve and conflict that has to be overcome. So when you defeat one of your either exes or your nan or whoever, you don't defeat them. You just come to a point of like reconciliation, which is that it's very much like if you think about like how Undertale subverted the like JRPG in terms of its storytelling and its mechanics, Thirsty Suitors does kind of a similar thing. And I mean, they're doing two very different things in terms of like where they're aiming for in terms of the story and whatnot. But I think the Thirsty Suitors is such a like a subversion of turn-based combat in terms of like it's not about the actual fighting and the mechanics. It's about like the in-between notes of the two people like talking to each other or arguing with each other. And I think crucially, because I know all of you like were big fans of Night in the Woods, and I think there's so much of that bleeds into this in terms of like how not pun intended, but like catty the characters can be with each other. But there's a lot of the kind of like teenage angst and emotional where like sometimes, I'll be honest, there are some times where it gets a little bit melodramatic where you just, and maybe it's because I'm 35 years old, where sometimes I'm looking at these characters like, well, you just shut the fuck up and get over it. Like, but I remember being 17 and, you know,
everything was the biggest thing in the world.
You know, I'd break out of a relationship and I was depressed for a year, where I look back at it now, I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with me? But
I was there for you.
Yeah, you were, Jack. Thank you very much. Be here for me now then. And I just think that they're
not over a Star War.
I think there's so much in there that just comes from a real place of meaning. And again, when you throw on top, like, I think this is probably one of the best, like, delicate dances around LGBTQ content. And approaches it from not just one angle. There's so many different characters that have so many different angles. You have straight characters, you have gay, lesbian, trans, gender like fluid. All of these characters are in here, and then you have this kind of melting pot of all of that on top of like the South Indian Tamil culture that is like a kind of forefront of Jala and her family. And there's just this blending pot of like music and culture and the artwork. And I just think that it's so brilliantly crafted to touch all these points, to not be self-indulgent about the way that it presents it and the story that it tells, and to have a really like kind of touching resolution in terms of like this family conflict where you've got this like ever-looming presence of the grandmother who, so, one thing I forgot to say, so you have random encounters that happen in the game, but they're not like random per se. When you're going around the town, you have these like gift boxes that you can go over, and they're called gift or grift. And you open it up, and if it's a gift, you get some coins or currency. But if it's a grift, it's a suitor that your grandmother has like sent to you to try and match you up for like an arranged marriage. And you just like, yeah, fuck you. And then you fight with them and you defeat them. And then there's like the fact that with the game itself, you know, you've got like, instead of, you know, poisoning your enemy or making them fall asleep, you can make them thirsty for you, or you can like make them angry or make them like really upset. And the context of like the lines that you say and the way that they go against each other, like every encounter has been written specifically for that encounter in mind. So when you get into like the actual fights as well with like your exes and whatnot, like the fights are all individually made for that. So there's so much like good writing and voice acting that I've made my case.
The thing I'll say, right, is that I think you've made a good case, and in the interest of diplomacy and respecting a good promo, the only thing I could say though is like, I would say of the other three that are left, the one I care the least about is Star Wars, which I know Jack loves, right?
Yeah, it's good.
But my thing about saying is, okay, we'll save Thirsty Suitors and cut Star Wars, even if we agreed on that, is I know we're going to go to bat for the other two.
Yeah, I'm going to go for Thirsty Suitors if it stays.
Yeah, so like, I mean, it's kind of much of a muchness. Will we like? Do you know what I mean? I don't know. I don't know how far Thirsty Suitors goes if we save it now and then Dave and then we redo it again in 20 seconds for Dave's pick. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, I'm digging my heels in.
He's digging his heels in, but. What do we want to do? Do you want to vote?
Like, if the three of you say it's going, then like I can't do anything past that. But
it's not making top two for me. Is it making top two for anybody?
No. So I would probably...
I can't because I'm the only one that played it.
Yeah.
Like,
well, I know I have, but not much of it.
I would probably let Jedi go because there are two games on here that I'd still really like, and probably of the two of them, that's the one that I care about least. But I think it was brilliant. Like, it was some of the best writing in a Star Wars related product.
I think Star Wars thing I like the most in fucking 10 years, if not more.
Time. It's a cool story. You know,
it enhances upon the original in almost every way, including story, I would say.
There's a fantastic heel turn in the game as well, when a guy that's kind of been helping you out for the whole game all of a sudden flips on you and like kills one of your mentors, and it's really dramatic. And you know, then the back half of the game is about you trying to hunt down this goddamn son of a bitch that's ruined your life, kind of thing. And
where are these two games set in the ever expanding timeline.
It's post episode 3, pre episode 4. So it's after Order 66. Cal is one of the 7 million people who somehow survived Order 66.
The thing is, there were a lot of Jedi, so like it's not inconceivable.
No, it's not.
That a bunch of them survived.
It's like people that many.
Yeah, well, how many are we saying?
The problem is not that I think Order 66 should have wiped everyone out. It's more so
they should have done a better job of it.
It's more so that in
this
episode
is the
4,
Empire who miss every single shot. You've seen those stormtroopers,
but it's more so that in episode 4 they act like Obi-Wan is like he's like this recluse and he had to hide he's a Jedi. And he's like
the last Jedi.
He's like the only one that could have trained Luke, is what they're kind of going for. And
on that planet, he is, probably.
But there's an implication in those original movies that there are no Jedi, not even a Resistance,
the second one they literally send him to another system with
another one guy on one planet who's also concealing his identity and also not like, we're getting into Star Wars stuff here. This is not the
can we stop?
This is not the Order 66 lore debate podcast. But anyway, I mean, so are we just is it just, will we just have the Alan Wake Spider-Man debate then?
I think that's where it's going.
I mean, if because that seems like where it's going.
Yeah, but I want to, Jedi Survivor, really great story, really good Star Wars story. Anyone that likes those old movies, I think, will really enjoy playing through this. And there's so many other good things about the game, and the story, I think, keeps it all together nicely. The side stuff I mentioned, there's like cool little quests and things that you can go and do that lead to other nice consequences. Nothing as cool as the cage side quest, which I absolutely loved and thought that was really good. But it's fucking good Star Wars content, man, and I'm a Star Wars fan, so hey, what can I say?
Does it in any way like tie in, or there's any of the recent TV shows like is there any? Because I know we were saying yesterday about like Star Wars loves to have like a Boba Fett or whatever.
Yeah, Barry got angry because there was a Boba Fett TV show and Boba Fett did turn up, and it was voiced by Tamora Morrison, who voices Boba Fett. So,
like, there's the either of like the first, what the hell was the first one? Fallen Order.
Yeah.
Do either of these two, like, did you see anything with the TV shows in any way where it kind of?
No, they're not, like the main character Cal doesn't pop up in the TV shows, but I think the popularity that these games have gained, I think
they will do one.
That it will happen at some point. There will be the crossover,
and also they've managed to snag a moderately successful Hollywood actor as their main character. So
they got
slot him in.
They got it on the ground floor with him.
Yeah, they did well there.
Exactly.
So we're gonna.
If they keep making these and they keep being this good, I'm gonna fucking love playing them for the next few years.
Yeah, so we're gonna do the Spider-Man versus Alan Wake discussion.
Can I talk about Spider-Man?
Because this is the thing. I watched your stream where you talked about the nominees, and you said something that I was like,
it's funny,
filing it away, and I'm like, I'm gonna ask Barry because you mentioned something about the third act of Spider-Man.
Because it's funny. So when you guys' excuse me about Spider-Man the other week, I really wanted to argue with you about in so many different ways, and I was going to be the Spider-Man defender in so many different ways about the open world and doubling down on concepts in the first game and so on and so forth. But the one area that I would join in the criticism of it would be the storytelling, and that's even though I think the first 2/3 of it are incredible.
Yeah.
And we even had a conversation in our group chat before for a moment of the year, and we were trying to whittle them down. I was like, this is like Wolfenstein II. You could do this category just for Spider-Man moments. There's so many great ones, and I did love the story for the first 2/3. Here are my problems with the storytelling, specifically in the third act. I hate when a Venom story turns into, I'm spawning a bajillion symbiotes and they're taking over the world. Venom. Completely boring sci-fi shite. I have absolutely no. To me, Venom is my favorite comic book villain maybe ever. Right? I think he's so great because of the dynamic where
shout out Tom Hardy.
He is. We love Tom. We love Topher Grace. But I love the idea of this Spider-Man gets this thing. It's this living thing, and he tears it off himself, and it's everything bad about himself that then latches onto one of his enemies, and he's basically fighting the shadow version of himself. I love that conceptually.
You love it when he has a big dance.
I love when he has a big dance. I love all of that. And this isn't even the first game. There's been multiple games that have done this. There's been comics, there's been TV shows and so on. I just hate when it turns into it might as well be the old comic book movie thing of shooting a laser into the sky. I just hate, and now I'm going to take over the world, and I've got nests all over the open world.
But you know that was done in service of the game more than the storytelling.
That's bad.
Yeah, but it's
still bad.
This is, well, I'm not saying it's good or bad, but what I'm saying is that you look at it like immediately when you start the game and the first thing you're doing is you're fucking jumping around the city doing the Sandman nest things. And this is one of my bigger issues with a lot of the side quests in the game. There's so much in there where they're dragging anything kicking and screaming, like story-wise, that they can fit into like, hey, here are like 10 nests to do whatever the fuck.
Yeah.
That are just usually
to put a thin veil of we're not just making you do it for the sake of it.
And to me, that hinders the open world gameplay, but in this particular context, it also then it goes both ways. It hinders the story as well. It makes Venom, because imagine if Venom was just one character that you were hunting down, and he was the biggest, scariest, baddest fucker in the world.
The other problem I have that like tied into that is that for the last act, I felt in terms of pacing, everything turning into a protracted, you're fighting the same boss 3 times. And like whatever, if you do the gimmick where you have a cutscene, you beat the boss, and then like oh my god, his health bar is refilled. But it's literally, I think the last 3, maybe 4 big boss battles, it's the exact same thing. And like it gets to the point where it's like I said, it's actively hampering the storytelling, because then you get to a cutscene and you're not bought into it, because like by the time it actually is the end of the boss battle, you're like, they're just gonna fucking the health bars are gonna refill, and then you're like, oh, it actually didn't this time.
Didn't they do that with Elden Ring?
No, not really. There's not like
wasn't there like a refilling boss?
No, like it's not the same thing where it's like it's literally the same fight 3 times. Like Soulsborne games do the thing where like sometimes you get a boss down to half health and it does a transformation. And it's a completely different battle. It may as well be 2 entirely different bosses. Whereas this is like, I'm facing...
you beat Scream, and then there's a cutscene where they talk, and then you fight Scream again.
It's the same fight 3 times.
I think like it's such a small thing that I think would have helped the perception is if that health bar had just been split into like 3 sections.
Or if you're fighting...
anything to do with the story.
It is. But it is. No, because they do... Of course it is.
Absolutely not.
It absolutely is. Because no, you're dead right, Barry, because it does the thing after every health bar where it goes to do the, like, it does the fake out thing where you go to a cutscene and it seems like this is going to be it, but by the time it gets to the one where it's actually supposed to have emotional weight, you're checked out, because it's like,
that's pacing, which is storytelling.
Pacing is all over the fucking shop in that.
This is why I like this category,
because even just having these bloated boss battles that are tedious grinds the storytelling to a halt, because I'm really enjoying the beat for beat of the story, and then I have to fucking do this, fucking Venom fight on the where you're going the football field, the little bits of the football field, you're jumping around the place, and it's like, it's fucking tedious, and it's just like the momentum of the story outside it grinds to a halt, and also you're kind of buying in emotionally to, like I said, after you get the health bar down the first time, it does a little cutscene, you're like, okay, here's the bit of storytelling. Oh fuck, it's not, I'm fighting him again, and then it does it again, it's like, oh fuck, I'm fighting him again. So then when the actual cutscene at the end of that little bit comes in, you're just like, you're sitting there waiting for the fight to start again, you're not actually enjoying the bit of storytelling that it's finally telling.
The game is constantly peaking slightly too early and then going slightly too long after that peak, and I that's
it's like a mid-2000s Ring of Honor main event.
That's the comparison I was making in my head, and I wasn't going to go there, but I think like that's what I like about this category, is it's best storytelling, not best story, and I would factor pacing and things like that into that. So I feel like this is like one of the best adaptations of the Venom story ever. It's one of the best adaptations of the Kraven character, so there's tons of strength there, but I did feel like they didn't stick the landing.
Cool. I disagree with all of it, what you just said, but because I did really like the boss fights. There are boss fights where you expect multiple stages, and the fact that it happened a couple of times made me then think, right, well, this isn't over.
There's a difference between multiple stages and the same stage 3 times.
Like the Scream fight is a good example.
I think literally 3 successive bosses in about an hour and a half's worth of gameplay.
To go to the Elden Ring comparison, when fucking
different attacks and you slightly environmentally changing those.
Like
wait, hang on. What is different about the phases of the Scream fight?
Yeah. Look, she does like heavier attacks in the second one, and then heavier even.
I wouldn't offhand if you tell me like it's like compared to what's the fucking character's name, the one that shoots out the dragon arm in Elden Ring.
Oh, Godfrey the Crafted.
That's a second phase of a boss.
That's not like they're doing like slightly heavier attacks.
Her attacks do
this
more
man
damage.
Has a fucking dragon arm.
Yeah, and also
or Millennia, like when she becomes infected with the rot.
That comparison does Spider-Man no favors at all, in my opinion.
You're comparing it to the best boss design. The genre is known for the best boss design in modern games.
One thing that I think that Spider-Man does really, really well, though, is that you can obviously tell that this is part of like possibly a trilogy, or however many games it's going to be. And one thing that the MCU films in particular struggle from is no film feels like a kind of self-contained bit. It feels like it's latched onto this greater, bigger thing. I think one of the things that Spider-Man 2 does really well is it feels like a self-contained story, and it doesn't feel like at the end of it that, this is just all here because it has to lead on to whatever happens next. Yeah. The whole arc with Kraven, the whole arc with Venom, it does feel like its own thing that doesn't have to be served as part of something bigger.
We're not saying that.
I think that's a big accomplishment.
We're not saying it's a bad story. Again, I think Barry is like Barry's point about like this is best storytelling. So the stuff about pacing and the boss battles and where the pace is all part of how the story is told.
But something more about just story, I will say, go back to something we said for character. I could have done with a smidge more Kraven, just a smidge more of how many he really doesn't actually have that many like actual lines in cutscenes across the whole game. Again, like we said, it's cool that it's in there, but like some audio logs in a base, that's not doing it for me. Give me some more actual cutscenes. This game is class.
I wish because if you like just played mainlined through the game and didn't have any of the open world side quest stuff, I feel like that campaign is actually quite short.
It's 31 missions.
It feels like that more so than either Spider-Man 1 or Miles Morales. It feels like the most kind of padded out, and I would certainly be in agreement that if there had been like a little bit less of the open world paddedness stuff and a little bit more in terms of the story, because anytime I was doing stuff around the story, I'm like, I'm here, I'm involved, and I want to know about what the fuck's going on with these characters. And as we was talking about recently on just the mainline podcast about like, okay, you can skip the side quest stuff, but all of that is tied to your upgrades. So
the main selling, not the main, but one of the main things that Sony were touting and in the build up to Spider-Man coming out was the fast travel and how incredible and what a technical feat fast travel is. But you have to do half the side quests in a district to unlock the fast travel.
And look, not all the side quests are bad.
No, not all of them.
That's one of the things I wanted to fight you about. I think a lot of them are great.
But I think that's the thing. I think like the stuff we talked about with Howard and stuff we talked about in a previous category.
Yeah.
I think because they've shown you what all the side quests could be, it makes you get madder at the ones that are just, we're just going to like do the fucking thing with the molecules again.
Yeah.
Or we're just going to, here's another hive of symbiotes, where it's just like, that's the chuff I'm talking about. I'm not saying, I don't want to misrepresent and say I think all side quests in the game are pointless. I really like the Visions Academy stuff that you were talking about in the last category.
That stuff is
but
so
again,
good.
like it's got the open world-itis of like, they couldn't handcraft all of it. So rather than just have the handcrafted ones, they had the handcrafted ones and the stuff that was just repetitive.
Can we say some nice stuff about it now, please?
Because that's the thing.
It has gotten loads of due. I'm not saying
I've seen plenty of good things.
But there's so many other great things that happen in this game. Like, I barely got a chance to touch about. Like,
go for it.
The Miles, like honestly, the whole side quest with the instruments and the recovery of that. Yes, all right, it's funny that like there was 3 different bands trying to steal musical instruments, Barry. But it's just really, really like a great, localized story about the city of Harlem, the community, and like really that strength in Miles to try and improve things in his area. And that comes from his mum and his relationship with his mum. And it ties that whole thing together really nicely. There's obviously the Howard stuff, but then there's like other side quests that are great. The one where there's the old guy who's kind of lost and he can't find his daughter.
Oh, that's great.
And you
that
just
one is
sit
so
with
good.
him in the park and he tells you about his life. And then like eventually, his daughter finds him and like just, Pete taking some time out from his day to just chat to a guy. Just like little moments like that I think are so, so effective and just hit all the right beats. I do think that I kind of disagree on the Venom thing because like Venom is, and again, you might start shouting and get angry about this, but like Venom is a fucking alien symbiote who's coming over to Earth, and like the primary directive of those symbiotes is to try and fucking infiltrate.
But they can write it to be whatever they want.
They can write it to be whatever they want.
They've taken liberties with other Spider-Man characters.
Yeah, you don't like that. I think that makes sense to me as a storyline.
Does it make sense? But is it as compelling as Venom is this one terrifying?
I don't know. I feel like,
Venom is still a one terrifying thing.
I feel like Venom is a little bit more one note than like any sort of human character, and I feel like
in general or in this. Because I would agree in this because he's just trying to take over the world, and it's not nearly as compelling
I'd say in
as
general, but I'm not enough of a
compared to the 90s animated version, which is like I think the definitive version, where those episodes, especially when you're a kid, are so fucking terrifying. Because what does that Hank Azaria voiced Venom want to do? Just destroy Peter Parker's life. Infinitely more compelling than I'm going to blow up a venom bomb in the city and make everyone a symbiote monster. Not compelling at all to me.
It doesn't feel like it's borrowing from the great Venom stories or creating its own new Venom story. It feels like every time Venom just popped up again subsequently in a show
I don't think you could do that version of Venom because they've already got Kraven.
But you could even do...
What do you mean?
Well, because Kraven, he's got more of like when he decides to focus on Spider-Man, he's got that kind of singular track like, I'm here to take out Peter Parker.
You totally could, because like almost...
Venom, like what you're saying about Venom, the 90s one, I feel like you'd have two characters that are fairly similar, like both going for Peter Parker.
I'm not saying I'm saying what they did wasn't very good.
But also, in your opinion, but I think it's good.
Also, to that point,
obviously, in my opinion. No, I've spoken to the police. Objectively, I'm right.
No, I'm just saying some people like it.
Also, to Mark's point about that you can't have the two villains go after Spider. It is Spider-Man.
It is Spider-Man.
The thing is, like all Spider-Man things are everyone's trying to get Spider-Man.
Yeah, I know, but you don't have two characters doing the same thing for the same reason.
But I was just using that as a frame of reference for an idea of what you could do.
You could even have a marriage of the two where it's like he's going to destroy Peter Parker, and with Peter Parker out of the way, I will then Venom the world.
I could do something else.
There's ways around it you could do that aren't just rote.
And like it's even in that third act of the game when Venom is finally there, like you were saying there.
When you finally hear Tony Todd, you're like, here we fucking go.
And he has like 4 lines in the game. He doesn't say anything because he's not much of an actual character. Once it actually gets going, he is insert supervillain here that's trying to turn New York into himself. He's the lizard from the first Andrew Garfield movie, unfortunately. And that's a harsh criticism, and I'm standing by it.
Very harsh. Because, like...
Tony Todd, Risa fans.
So the
lads.
The majority of the game, though, is like, he's with Harry, right?
Yeah.
And then that's why he gets super, super angry and super, super vengeful once he gets back with Harry. Like, after Harry realizes that Pete was the one that was holding onto the suit. So, therefore... At first, he is what you're describing. He is not like trying to fucking fuck everything up and take over the world. Half the reason he fucks New York up is because he wants to lure Pete out and have the final big off battle with him, because that's how he gets him to do it. What is Spider-Man known for? Protecting his community. Let's take over New York first before I enact my world plan, so I can lure the Spider-Men out, defeat them, and then go and do whatever the fuck that I want to do with the rest of the world. The stuff with Peter and Harry in this game, I think, is brilliant. The way they set up the flashbacks to their youth, of them being nerds.
Those are great.
Yeah. And like the gradual, realization that Harry is now Venom, and then what happens with Pete, and then how Pete loses it. Even when you're playing as Pete when he is Venom, and him just being that much more of a prick, they nailed it. Tonally, everything was really, really good. And to me, the reason that Venom gets to the point as where he gets to is more about luring out the Spider-Men than it is about initially just trying to take over the world. Because he wouldn't just stop at New York, would he? He would be carrying on up the eastern seaboard till he gets to Maine or something, going, maybe not Canada yet, I'm going to go...
Go to Maine. All the Stephen King characters are up there. You're sticking away from Maine. Maine is fucking hardcore, man. Jessica Fletcher's up there as well.
Holy shit, yeah. Venom versus Fletcher in Spider-Man 3.
Venom she wrote.
Venom she fucking
wow.
wrote. Yeah, wow.
There's DLC coming your way.
Wrote a great game. But to me, it's more about that than it is about just, I'm going to take over the world flat. I like the idea that, a symbiote from an alien planet is going to try and take over the world, because it makes fucking sense to me anyway. But it's more about Harry and Peter than it is about trying to take over the world. In my opinion, that was my read.
I think where I end up in, I'm not saying I was as down, like I was, the actual, it being, and I agree with Barry's sentiment that it kind of goes to a Venom of the week in Act 3 to a certain extent. I'm not as down on it being that as Barry is, because I love the first and second act so much, but I come back to the storytelling thing. And part of telling the story is how it ends. And I think Spider-Man fumbles it at the 10-yard line with that stuff that I talked about. We're kind of agreeing that Act 3 is where it falls apart for us, but we feel stronger about different elements. I feel stronger about the pacing and the stuff I've already talked about. I'm not going to get back into that necessarily. You feel stronger about the venom of it all. But I do think we are aligned, and I think even Jack is the high man on Spider-Man. I think we're all aligned that there wasn't enough Tony Todd. There's never enough Tony Todd in anything.
But also, one thing I initially thought was interesting, but when it kind of played out, I was a little disappointed. They kind of established early on that at some point in this universe, the lizard has been a thing, right? Oh, like before this game, he's been the lizard. So when you're fighting him, it's not the first time you fight the lizard, which is cool. But again, similar to Kraven and similar to Venom, I feel like I didn't get enough.
There's a point at which okay, we're done with lizard now.
Yeah, but even before he becomes a lizard, it's just kind of like, oh, I don't want to turn into the lizard again. There's not much there. And again, the game it doesn't have to be Baldur's Gate length 100 hours long.
I think I disagree with that. I think that the lizard being the plot device for things that happen afterwards, I think that the way that arcs, I have no issue with that.
Yeah,
I think
because honestly,
he's more of a tool.
Yeah, but the storyline is that all of the former villains are tools because Kraven wants to.
No, I know that. I'm just saying I would have liked more of the character.
Then it becomes like more of a lizard story than it is what the actual Kraven.
I think the issue isn't that there isn't enough lizard. I think that there isn't enough of the other bosses that Kraven's after to have arcs with those.
Well, that's
You have moments with all of them, which I think are cool.
I don't think there's enough.
And I think one of my favorite things in the game is Miles going from that I want to fucking kill Mr. Negative because of what he's done to my life. That whole
thing is really, really well.
And
that's
then
the best bit.
Eventually reaching the point where they're fighting together and he makes peace with
I felt that has the best game-ending level payoff of Spider-Man 2. It was more satisfying and a bigger payoff than the actual end of the game.
Which part?
You know what I mean? Like the Mr. Negative, the arc of that wrapping up felt way more satisfying than anything with Lizard or Kraven or Venom.
Honestly, there's a part of me where it's like, if they had just done like a Spider-Man Peter Parker and then just had like the Venom stuff off to one side and then done like a Miles Morales 2 that was just like the Mr. Negative to wrap that up, you probably have two much more kind of focused stories that probably would have been like even stronger games.
And I suppose that's where, like, much as I think like if anything else was on the list left besides this, I'd be quite happy despite my reservations here or there to be like, yeah, Spider-Man, best storytelling. But it's the fact that we are comparing it to something that is so focused.
Yeah.
So like absolutely it spins so many plates in not only the story it's telling, but the way it tells the story. And nails it.
Because the funny thing is, like, despite my qualms, I still probably would have had Spider-Man as my best story. I probably would have had it as my best story a week later.
Until a month ago, it was gonna be.
But I also then would have kind of considered it a little bit of a slow year in the story sense, just because
the gap between everything and these two is huge.
Yes, yeah. Also, as the Baldur's Gate 3 non-understanders, obviously notwithstanding. I mean, I don't think we need to go over all the saga stuff.
I think there's a couple of little bits we didn't get into on the story.
You mentioned the non-linearity, which I think is so fucking cool. So the switching back and forth between the timelines is great because there are those a handful of moments where they're kind of like breaching through realities and they're having these sort of staticky conversations with each other. But which side of that conversation you hear first depends entirely on what order you're playing the game.
And I imagine whose side, like who you feel, because if you had done Alan's chapters first and understand why he's doing the manuscript stuff with the daughter, you get way more sympathetic towards Alan was in a corner and this is what he had to do. Whereas I played a lot of Saga first, so I was just like, what the fuck you fucking beardy piece of shit, what are you doing? You know what I mean? Like, but then the other thing I want to talk about in terms of like story telling. There's one thing I mentioned last night after we got off our first session of Game of the Year recording, and that's something really quick little bit of storytelling, and that's the visceral, horrifying death screen when you're playing Alan chapters. Whenever you die as Alan, it's like there's the loading screen basically is just like FMV Alan, like just like fucking twitching on the ground and looking at the camera, and then it does a Prince of Persia Sands of Time type thing where he cuts to him going, no, that's not what happened, and he's retyping his story, which I really love that because the game is so it's like this horrifying Groundhog Day of him getting fucking this mesh
to death.
But then also something that Remedy started experimenting a little bit with Quantum Break, experimented a lot in Control with, and I think now is the fullest realization of it, is the overlay of FMV storytelling on top of things, and it's one of the most like astounding parts of the game, and it adds so much to the tense horror. It adds so much to the characterization of Saga, of Alan, where you're playing through it. It helps with the jump scares. I suppose the most kind of viscerally least deep storytelling part of it is like overlaying the FMV stuff does help with jump scares.
Yeah.
But also you're having these things kind of like if you played Control and you haven't played Alan Wake yet, there are these moments. It's mainly with the director, the previous director, Trench, where Jesse is having these cutscenes, these kind of, it's not even a conversation. It's like she's monologuing and Trench is monologuing, and the two monologues are sort of interrelated.
Yeah.
But there are these moments where like Saga or Alan are having these discussions and ancillary characters are popping up FMV overlay in the scene.
Yeah.
Whether it's Sam Lake or it's, you know, Scratch or it's whoever else, you know, your man, I can't think of the dude that they're investigating his murder at the start.
Oh,
you're seeing bits of that guy. Yeah.
I can't remember. It's
and there's like some of the real chilling shit, like down in the morgue in the sheriff's office we didn't talk about at all, which is one of the most, like, when I talk about something that gives you remember that feeling of going through the hospital in Metal Gear Solid 5 where you're just like, I don't want to go to, I no, whatever's down here is not fucking good. You know what I mean? But you're having to force yourself in, and I think it's so ambitious as well with how it tells the story.
Yeah,
you know,
and
like
there's also a thing they carried forward from Alan Wake 1, which is you are also finding pages of the story that he's writing that are called. So obviously they'll tell you in cutscenes certain crucial bits that reflect, you know, like the daughter's dying or whatever the fuck. But like you can also, a part of they really weave gameplay collectibles into the story because you can read them and they're really interestingly written.
And you don't,
things.
but in a way I like that Control does as well, where you're not missing. It's not that like you'll be like, what the fuck is happening here without picking up. You know the way that BioShock had that thing, Mark, like the BioShock games where you don't really understand what's going on in Rapture or Columbia unless you're at least listening to a good few of those voxophones and stuff. You understand perfectly what's going on in Alan Wake without ever having to read, or usually with a lot of the important manuscript pages, when you pick it up, they do voiceover. You don't have to go in and read over audio logs or anything like that. But you're not missing anything of the story without them, but it enhances your experience if you're willing to immerse yourself. Same with the thing we haven't talked about a lot is the mind play stuff, where you're putting together the case and like Saga goes in and she's solving these multiple cases, the multiple branches of the story using photographs and evidence she's gathering. And what that is giving you a real cool opportunity to do is like logically lay out and pour over all the details of what you've seen, in case you yourself, because you were shitting your pants, missed a little detail of what someone said. The option is there for you to go, oh, okay, I can see how that thread is related to that one. And then you also get to do these things where at first, before you kind of get to grips with all the supernatural stuff that's going on, there's stuff that's kind of like almost like a Sherlock Holmes type intuiting, where she's like, it's like she's interrogating the motives behind what people do. She has these files for the different characters, and at first you think it's her just intuiting what they must have thought, like she's interrogating a hypothetical version of somebody. But then later on in the game you kind of figure that because of what's going on with reality is like she actually is she's able to, how would you describe it? She's a
telepath, basically.
She's basically, yeah.
Which is funny because they don't explain that early on, and I thought it was just some wacky Remedy humor. So you go into this profiling section of the game and you pick fucking Johnson or whoever you're talking to, and you're looking for some piece of evidence at a crime scene. You're like, where's the heart that was cut out of the victim? And so this stylish Remedy FMV thing plays out where the character's like, oh, stash that heart. Fucking cops are all over the place. And then the cutscene ends and Saga goes, the heart is in the general store, and you're like, whoa, how did you wait? How? Yeah, it's like not explained at all early on.
And
it's
if that had been it, I would have been like, it would have been something that would count against it in this category.
Yeah, I was like, are they doing? I was like, is this some weird oddball again, Twin Peaksy bullshit where she is making that massive logical leap, and then you find out like she is actually I don't think they call it a telepath, but she's basically a telepath.
No. And is she a telepath if Alan's writing a character? Is that not how she just finds out?
No. She's a telepath.
Okay. But there's also she's a telepath, but there's also a thing where as she's like with certain profiles, she's able to see through, like, depending on the situation. I think the most drafts Alan has of a version of reality is 4. But it's like whatever she's got her shinning
Or
she's able to see through his different drafts.
Yeah.
You know?
And once they confirm that she is a literal telepath, because there's later on in the story, you just start having conversations with people, like not even weird mystic. I'm trying to deduce this. She starts, like, her family members told, like, she just starts talking.
But that's one of the other things about this. So we talk about the old gods of Asgard, who do Herald of Darkness, and then, like, you get to the trailer park, which is one of the trailer park and the theme park are like my favorite parts of that game. Coffee World. But you're at the trailer park and you find your two elderly relatives who are the dudes from the band, but they're old now. So like they've woven even like the ridiculous pompous band in the meta stuff that's going on in the game are actually important characters to the narrative, and they've also in that sequence repositioned characters from the original Alan Wake into, so there's a woman, Rose is like in the home, and then it's Rose that's then a boss as well. That's the other one. Cynthia.
She's minding in the old folks' home.
So they've done a cool thing for like people who know, like it doesn't, again, it's one of those things where it doesn't make it worse if you didn't play the first game, but it makes it better if you did. There's that. There was Coffee World is great.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Right, and this is one thing that, again, and this is not me trying to like chalk it off. Is the ending of this game not good?
No, it's great.
It's great. I think it's brilliant. I think it's perfect.
The criticisms I was reading were that the ending was not good.
I could understand why someone would say that.
But I think, do you know what's funny is like I actually thought when I saw someone say that, I thought it was going to be, because my worry was that for a game that its strength is its storytelling. Like, you know, there are games on this list. I think if you took out, and this isn't to discount it in storytelling, I'm not saying that, but like if you took all the storytelling out of Spider-Man 2, like fundamentally that's still like a dumbass fun game to play. The thing you more than anything are coming to Alan Wake for is the storytelling and the atmosphere, right? But where was I going with that?
We were talking about the ending.
So the thing I was worried about was that, is this gonna, for all its storytelling, chuck that out in Act 3, and like literally the last thing you do is a boss battle, you know what I mean? And then it's just like, okay, credits.
Yeah.
But what they do is they put the quote unquote final boss, like you face Scratch, and the idea isn't to kill Scratch, it's to trap him. You're working with Sam Lake and the Department of Control and the old gods of Asgard, and it's like everybody get the band together and they literally do a gig down on the beach while you're
so cool.
It's so fucking cool. While Scratch, who is a fucking terrifying, like overpowered monster, who looks like Alan, is coming after Saga, and you're trying to like expose him to the light, which is the Alan Wake thing, and then trap him in this cage. But the thing I love about it is that boss battle takes place about 45 minutes before the end of the game. Like it goes, we know you're here for the storytelling, let's do the boss battle now, and then we'll give you all the satisfactory, like, you know, the thing. I think something that maybe some people didn't care for was the game is Alan Wake, and Alan Wake sacrifices. I feel like people wanted the continued tales of Alan Wake after the game, whereas he sacrifices himself.
The other thing I think people don't like, and I think this is fair, I don't agree, but I think it's fair. I think people don't like a somewhat cliffhanger-y ending. And because I remember I was reading like in a Discord after I finished, I went back into like an Alan Wake thread and I was reading what people were saying, and I saw someone like say, I hope they clarify what happens in DLC, and I'm like, I would hate that. I think it's so much cooler than what
in horror. Like horror is the genre where I'm like, no, give me uncertainty. Give me uncertainty.
Give me that hereditary.
The other thing I want to talk about in terms of like the story of Alan Wake that we haven't mentioned at all is the wife.
Oh,
and
Alice,
the subplot with Alice Wake, who it's so fucking cool, because the whole thing that Alan is doing is like the first game he's trying to save her from the dark place, and he ends up in the dark place.
Yeah.
Now he's in the dark place and he's trying to get back to her, but as part of his loops, he keeps ending up back in their apartment building. And she's like a visual artist, so he is seeing what's happening to her on the outside world through her own art. So he keeps trying to get back home. Literally, he's trying to get back home. And every time he comes to their apartment, there's like different iterations of her latest art exhibit, like, which is dedicated to his memory, because she assumes he died and drowned in the lake 13 years ago. so there's all this like footage of like she doesn't know why he did it, why he threw himself into the lake and stuff like that, and like FMV, like her sitting down on the camera talking about it.
Very Immortality in some ways.
Yeah,
as well,
and you get to this like heartbreaking thing right as you go into the final act. I think this is where the realization on Alan comes that he's going to have to sacrifice himself, is the implication that she threw herself off the cliff into the lake because she couldn't handle life without him anymore.
Yeah.
Because the world is too dark and stuff like that. But what he's not seeing, again, because of the way the drafts are, at least now it's an implication. I can't remember if it's like a flat out, no, this is what happened, is there is an implication that actually what she was doing was trying to do what he did in the first game. She was actually trying to save him, and she's actually still alive.
There's a lot of themes of loops and shit like that, because even the ending, you know what comparison is for the ending actually is, you know, Inception, when he spins the top and then cuts to black.
Yeah.
That is very much what that ending is, because it's like, Alan Wake sacrificed himself. We did it. We beat evil. And then Saga's calling to see if her daughter picks up, and then they cut to black because he's like, did we beat the evil? And it's so meta and full of red herrings, because there's also a constant back and forth. So Scratch is a doppelganger of Alan Wake, so you don't know who you're dealing with a lot of the time.
There's such a cool moment where like Alan, like at the end of Act 1, Alan comes out of the dark place and he's in the cop station and he's helping them all kind of piece together what's happening. And then there's a bit where Saga goes out back to the lake to investigate, and in one of those kind of end of chapter things where she's communicating through the void, and there's a sense of you don't know when, like from what period is she seeing Alan, in the past, the present, or the future, when she's seeing him through the haze of the dark place. There's a moment where the penny drops that the Alan that's in the police station isn't Alan.
Yeah.
It's Scratch.
Okay.
And it's her getting back before he's laid waste to the entire town.
Because also when you're switching back and forth and you're playing as Alan, you also don't know, am I going back in time
is
to
this
do this?
Yeah, is this happening during the 13 years he was in the dark place before? Like, cause that's the assumption.
Yeah.
When you start playing as him, is this is all the stuff, and the end of his arc will be him coming out of the lake when you saw him at the end of Act 1. But then you start to figure out this stuff has happened simultaneously.
Yeah. And that's why I do like the ambiguity of the ending, is because like that's what the game is, that's what the story is. It's loops and it's ambiguity and it's red herrings, and it's a story about art changing reality. And so how would you ever really know when that stopped? But I think that's our and it's Alan Wake corner.
Yeah.
And I imagine, I mean, there's not much
phenomenal.
beyond
phenomenal storytelling.
vote. Yeah, I mean, I was excited for this game, not because I loved Alan Wake 1, because I don't really like Alan Wake 1's not that good. I was excited for this as the next thing Remedy did after Control, their next big thing, and I would go back and forth on whether this or Control is like their masterpiece, but the fact that you could have that conversation, I think, speaks to the strength of Alan Wake. But yeah, I suppose we can just go
to a vote.
So I'll go Alan Wake 2.
Well, we're starting with Jack.
Oh, sorry, Jack, go. Alan Wake 2.
I mean, look, Spider-Man 2.
Alan Wake 2.
Yep.
Alan Wake 2.
Thirsty Suitors.
It was 36?
Yeah.
Okay.
Best story of the year.
All right. So then, best storytelling for 2023 is Alan Wake 2.
Yay.
Finally, we don't have a draw. That's the greatest victory of all, I think.
Do you know what? This will be the one category where Spider-Man will be top of the polls and Mark's.
In terms of how many people have played it, we were talking about this off the air last night, where it's like we don't know what these polls are going to be like, because there's a lot of things that I think that, say in Alan Wake versus Spider-Man, more people have definitely played Spider-Man.
Yeah.
But the people who love Alan Wake, love Alan Wake. Yeah. So I'm excited to see this one. So this is best storytelling. We'll read the poll. We have got we go for a top 4.
Sure, why not?
Okay, with 10% of the vote, Thirsty Suitors. So you're not completely out to lunch.
Yep.
Vindicated slightly by the people. Third place, 13.3% of the vote, Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Wow.
There you go.
Wow, I thought that would have won in a walk.
Number 2, 23.3% of the vote, Alan Wake 2.
Baldur's Gate.
Wow. Oh, it is
30% of the vote, Baldur's Gate.
Yeah.
Okay, so
everyone's mad at us.
I'm glad we do the listener poll, because now Baldur's Gate has gotten its recognition on the pod.
Yeah.
I honestly thought if I would have been out of the house, I would have put the mortgage on if we had deadlocked and gone to the poll, Spider-Man would have won. I'm actually really surprised at that.
Yeah. I wonder, does Alan Wake coming out so close to Game of the Year help?
I think Spider-Man as well also
benefited. The two of them are right at the end.
Yeah.
I think also, I've thought about it, like, I think maybe not in this category. I'm not saying it would be in this category, but I think Tears of the Kingdom is going to suffer in a lot of people's voting. because it was so early, and a lot of the heavy hitters that we all have on the list were relatively late.
Yeah.
It's interesting, but it's just the way time works, isn't it, lads?
That's the way she goes.
That's the way the cookie crumbles.